when I was 11, shortly after taken to the spot, I got run up on by another gang. And when I got run up on by another gang, obviously they forcibly entered the place with a firearm and that was pointed at me. At that time, I didn't really see money. I just literally went to deliver and bring back the money to them. So I don't know how much money that they're making in that day. I got stabbed because for them, it's kind of crazy. It might be faith, it might be whatever. But I looked a lot like my foster care nephew. And because I looked a lot like him, a lot of times I was asked, like, are you related to him? My name is Sosa, and this is how I.
He was young Sosa before everything else, so I guess, what was your childhood like?
I'll say my childhood was quite, I'll say lonely and different. But obviously, originally, I was born in Nigeria. And when I was 2, my mum left, just disappeared. So for me, a lot of times, it was a fact of expecting her to come back, but never really knew when she was going to come back. So when she left at 2, shortly after that, I was introduced to my father and also introduced to my stepmom. And then by the time I was 8, I was being brought over by my stepmom to reunite with my father in the UK. No one can really give me a straight answer about my mum. So that's always been, say, the first form of abandonment for me that I felt quite at quite a young age, because not knowing like if she chose to leave or it was a fact of she had to leave. I've had different stories of my mum tried to come over to Europe to give me a better start and everything else. But for me, I never knew, obviously, the actual story, probably till I meet the woman.
What was it like sort of growing up in Nigeria?
You see, most of my memories in Nigeria, I'll probably say I blocked a lot of it. And that's all probably traumas I'm still trying to deal with now as an adult. But I probably only know when I go back to Nigeria. But the one memory I can remember of growing up in Nigeria was that when I was in boarding school, I remember like being picked on by the older kids in boarding school. But even then, I was in boarding school from probably around the age of like 5, 6.
For like the viewers that don't know what boarding school is in Nigeria, can you sort of like paint a picture?
I'll say it's a residential home where it's actually a residential school. That's the best way to explain it. It's probably a residential school, but for me, it's like I don't know. I'll probably say the memories of that boarding school is terrible because I don't really remember as much like in Nigeria.
So what type of kid were you growing up? Like, were you always sort of drawn to the streets, or did you have like
Nah.
another dream when you were young?
So when I was like, I'll say when I was 8 to like 10, 11, for me, it was more of a fact of like, I wanted to dance. I loved playing basketball. Even though there were other things happening in my life at that time, obviously, when I came into the country, shortly after coming to the country, my stepmom was obviously physically and also mentally abusive. So for me, home wasn't like, wasn't safe. But in school, I tried to, I'll say, people please everybody in school because I wanted to fit in. I wanted everyone to like me. So a lot of it was literally just more a fact of like, I would say that I was smiling 24/7, trying to make sure no one always thinks anything of it. I would say that I would say first it probably started with more of a, your your dad doesn't love you. That's the verbal bit. The verbal bit was that your dad doesn't love you, no one loves you, all of these type of things where it made me feel not wanted in the household. But then I'll say shortly after that didn't work, it then became a fact of then her, I'll say physically, obviously laying hands on me. And that went from using her hands, then to using other weapons. Then after that, it became like poles and everything else.
At any point, did you feel like telling anyone?
For me, it was like, obviously, I'm Nigerian. So growing up in Nigeria, if you do something wrong, like usually is like discipline is normal, like literally physical discipline is normal, but it became, I'll say, for me, it was more of a factor of where I didn't look at it as, oh, that she was doing anything wrong. I was looking at was that I needed to do better.
Was there a moment when life started to shift for you?
I would say that I was still young. We moved from Kent, obviously, into London. And when we moved from Kent into London, because that's when so when I first came into the UK, we lived in Kent. And after moving from Kent to London, I was then obviously going to school and I was allowed to go to school by myself because it wasn't that far from the house. And it not being that far from the house, it was the fact where I'm obviously walking now with other kids and everything else. And I remember disclosing to another friend at that time. And I feel like that's probably the first time I ever felt shame, where I basically sat down and told him that this is what's happening in my house. And he's all like to me, oh, this shouldn't be happening to you. You should tell social services and this and that. But at the time, I didn't know what social services was. So him trying to say to me, oh, tell social services, I did not know what he was talking about. I just looked at it as a fact of, okay, maybe there's something wrong here. But even then, my first thought wasn't to run away. My first thought was like, okay, maybe there's something wrong. But I'll say that as time went, obviously the abuse became worse. And one time we was coming back from a family member's house. And when we was coming back from a family member's house, I remember that just before we got to the front door, like she had her heels in her hands. And obviously she just turned around and hit me with her heels. And then my head started bleeding. And when my head started bleeding, at that point is where I probably said I made a decision of like, okay, cool, I can't stay here any longer. Even then, it was a fact where like, for me, I'll say loyalty has always been a big thing for me. I always felt loyal to be there with my father. And especially when you want family and everything else, I didn't want to leave my dad. When obviously I was given the decision of either walking up the stairs or getting in the lift with her, for me, I chose the stairs and she chose the lift. And obviously for me as a child, I'm flying up the stairs like ASAP, like jump like 2 steps, like up there. I've got up to the floor that I think was the second floor at this time we was living in. And I remember just waiting for the lift to come up, but also looking at the corridor where I sat there and thought to myself, okay, cool. Like, I want to go into the house and be there and obviously have my family with my dad and everything else. But also, I felt like I couldn't stay. So, in feeling like I couldn't stay, I remember literally exiting from the other exit from the block and running away. So, when I was put into care, I did speak to my dad, but at the time, my dad, he was strongly with my stepmom at that time. And for him, it was the fact of like, also now as an adult looking at, I felt like he also had a responsibility for his wife. So for him at that time, he took that serious too. And he probably hoped that I would have came back home. But it was a fact for me where I didn't feel safe at home. And I kept on disclosing that. But obviously, it didn't go how obviously we wanted, how I thought it would have went. So it was a fact where I was put into for local authority had full custody over me probably in the probably space of a year, and in them having full custody, the same time my stepmom was also sentenced for child abuse.
What was it like growing up in Kent?
I was the only, I was supposed to say like it was me and another guy that was the black youth in the whole school. So for me, and it was quite funny because everyone thought that, oh, straight away I probably want to be his friend. But for me, I just wanted to know my environment and know the people that I had around me. So I didn't really fit in any box or any friendship group or any circle or sort of association.
School is where like a lot of people either stay on track or they start sort of slipping.
Yeah.
What was school like for you?
Ooh. Before I went into care, school was, I was probably say I had to behave myself fully because if I didn't behave myself, I knew what happened when I got home. So that beatings would have been 10 times worse than a normal day. So for me, is that the more behaved I was, the less the beating was at home. But then also, I will also say that even when I then moved from Kent into London and I was still living with my parents, I would say that I became very attached to my teachers because I wanted that acceptance from an adult.
Did you enjoy school, or did it feel like a place where you didn't belong?
I'll say both. At first, I did, and I'll probably say I did enjoy school because obviously, especially coming from Nigeria, I was a lot smarter than most kids in the school. So it was like kind of like cool. Like teachers liked me, everyone liked me. But then slowly that started dipping as obviously the abuse became worse at home. And when I was then put into care, it was then a fact of now where like I couldn't regulate in school and I couldn't function in school. Because a lot of times people forget the fact of if now you don't feel safe outside of the environment that you're in, it's hard for you to concentrate and take in knowledge and information that's being given to you. Other kids, like year six, and I started getting fights, a lot of fights, because obviously at first I was bullied a lot, where it was a fact of like, oh, I'm fresh off the boat. I obviously all different type of names because I dressed and I looked different. But then by the time we go into year six, and this is when I was really in care and everything now, I started getting cracking. I just started getting into loads of fights where I didn't want anything that anyone was saying about me that I weren't acceptance of. I just, yeah, straight thing I thought about was violence. But I would say definitely because that was really introduced to me from home. So violence was kind of like becoming my normal. Secondary school became different because by the time I got into secondary school, I've already been taken out of London, and obviously I had I'll say my summer between year six to year seven. That was probably, I'll say, my life changing summer. Because obviously by the time I got into year seven, my life is already, it's kind of different where now I'm not actively involved in gang culture.
What age did you start getting exposed to gang culture?
I'll say pretty much as soon as I got into care. Like as soon as I got into care, I'll say that it was a fact of obviously my foster carer, amazing lady, but then the wider family members obviously were amazing, but obviously the other kids and that they're already actively involved. And because they were actively involved, it was a fact where like it's a thing where I looked up to my foster carer's nephew. And then looking up to my foster carer's nephew, he made sure that I looked like other kids, I dressed like other kids. And I started copying him, trying to understand because obviously I thought he's loved and liked. So if I'm a lot like him, then I might feel the same by everyone else. So a lot of times it was basically trying to be like him, but then obviously he was actively involved in gang culture, and him being actively involved in gang culture introduced me to around his friends and his obviously circle of association.
Was there a particular moment or a specific moment that pulled you into that lifestyle?
Um, yeah, I would say that that whole basically the year six to year seven where I was given autonomy by my foster carer. And in being given autonomy by my foster carer, I was told either I go to a play center in the summer or I'm allowed to go to the park and everything else. So obviously me at that time, I chose to go to the park because obviously I want to fit in and I want to be like other kids. So in going to the park, I was then introduced to kids who were like a couple of years older than me, and in being introduced to them, at that time I had a BMX, and because I had a BMX, it was a factor for them. They just thought straight away he has a bike, and let's try use the bike. But for me, I didn't really trust these kids because I just met them and I don't really know them. So when they were asking me to go deliver whatever they were obviously delivering from the park, for me, it was a fact of like fitting in and trying to be cool with my friends. You know what I'm trying to say? So simple fact, I was being told to deliver things. After delivering a few things, it then became a thing where like if it started in the park, now it's outside of the park. Now we're in the neighborhood, we're walking around the neighborhood and everything else. And that's when I was obviously introduced to their orders. And when I was introduced to their orders, it's also a fact where their orders straight away is a fact of cool, can you go away for a week? And for me at that time, I felt like I couldn't do that. So it was then changed to can you go away for a day? And that's exactly what happened. I thought to myself, I'll be with my friends for a day. And I'll say that's when I was taken away to back to Kent, where I thought that by the time, obviously, when I get there, I'm gonna be with all my friends. But by the time I got there, none of my friends were in the car. It was just me in the car. I'll say a day to day for me was like I'll go to the park, and in going to the park, they might get a phone call, and if they get a phone call, they might ask me to, obviously, they have might put in a little bag and just say to me, "Oh, can you take this to this road? Let's say if it's Springfield or something, can you take this to Springfield, number 10 in Springfield?" And they'll tell me how to get to Springfield, and I'll literally just pedal to Springfield, drop it at the house, and after dropping at the house, I'll come back with cash. Like, it was normal. It was like, to me, it was a normal day. Like, and that happened probably like a lot of times while I was in the park.
Did you ever get scared doing this,
Nah,
or did it just become normal?
to me, it was just I'm on my bike. Literally, I'm just on my bike, pedaling away like any other kid will be pedaling away. Like, even now, when I look at other kids and I think to myself, "Raw, like, they're able to experience just being a child." But for me at that time, I was just being a child. Like, literally, just on my bike, doing what I was told to do. And after that, I'm coming back to my friends and I'm chilling with my friends. At that time, I was like 11.
So at the age of 11, how much money did you see at one point?
At that time, I didn't really see money. I just literally went to deliver and bring back the money to them. So I don't know how much money that they're making in that day. To me, I'm just going there, coming back, going there, coming back. I'll say that when I was taken away for the day, that's when I'll probably say that I saw a couple, probably like a grand or two. So obviously, when I was taken to the spot when I was 11, shortly after taken to the spot, that got run up on by another gang. And when I got run up on by another gang, I'll say that obviously they forcibly entered the place with a firearm, and that was pointed at me then. And shortly after that, obviously they were related to my foster carer's nephew, and because they knew my foster carer nephew, they took me back. But in coming back, I gave one of the parcels to one of the people in the car, not knowing what to do with the parcels. Obviously, the money parcel, I knew what to do with it, but the drug parcel, I never knew what to do with at that time. So when I then gave that drug parcel to someone, when I got back and I started year 7, it was a fact where I would say that shortly after starting year 7, I started getting phone calls where the other gang that obviously took me there, for them straight away was a fact of, "Raw, you owe us money, you lost our stuff, or you robbed us, da 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 da. Your family, we're coming after your family. If we see your mom, we see," because obviously my foster care had a son. So they're saying if we see him, whoever it is, they're getting it. So shortly after that, I had a looked after child review meeting, which obviously all kids in care have. And obviously for social services, the Modern Day Slavery Act was introduced in 2015. So for social services, this can't be happening. Like, you're only a child and it's not real. So when I had that meeting and I told them what happened, and it was a fact of this can't be happening, it was then a fact I felt like I had to turn to the people who I looked as my savior, who came in when these people abandoned me in the place. And I'll say, in turning to them, obviously I went to them and I explained to them the situation I was in right at that moment in time, told them that obviously these people are threatening me and they're saying to me that they're going to come after me. But I would say what made that situation 10 times worse now was that the elders at that time made me call the people who were after me. And in that time, they then basically told the people that basically, if you're coming after him, he's with us and everything else. But in also that meeting with these people, I was also given a revolver 380, which was a firearm. And at that time, I was still 11.
When you saw that firearm at that age, what were you thinking?
For me, I understood firearm more when it went off, not when it was still. When it was still, it was just like, this is a heavy thing. This is just heavy. That's how I looked at it. I never looked at it as like, oh, this is something crazy. Like, I'll say later on, when it was going off, I realized, okay, this is something crazy. But then it's too late.
At that time, what was probably the most scariest thing that happened to you?
I got stabbed in shortly after that in year 7. I got stabbed because for them it's kind of crazy. It might be faith, it might be whatever, but I looked a lot like my foster care nephew. I looked a lot like him, and because I looked a lot like him, a lot of times I was asked, like, "Are you related to him? Are you related to him?" And obviously, I'm someone that obviously, like I said on the start, loyalty was always a big thing for me. So I never denied him because he always told me never to claim him. So I never denied him, but in never in denying him, I also never obviously admitted that I knew him either. And I feel like that got obviously his enemies at that time, considering that I was going to school where obviously his enemies were. And that led to obviously me being stabbed in year seven.
What was that whole process like?
For me, it was a fact of like, I'll say I died. Like every single part of me died. Because it was like, especially for me, it was also by older kids too. So imagine I was in year seven and these were year 11s that was applying pressure. So for me, it was like at that point, my heart dropped. Every part of me thought that that's it. Like there's no coming back. And especially being left there to bleed out, for me was also a fact of like there's no one coming. And the next thing I woke up in the hospital. Like, but for me it was like there was no one coming.
At this point, what was your relationship like with your stepmom and your dad?
My my dad was obviously absent. So my dad was gone and my stepmom was on the run.
And how did that make you feel?
Like I had no one. Like for me it was, I would say that a lot of my childhood I felt like I had to navigate and raise myself. Like there weren't really anyone else. And obviously my oldest had a big influence in it. But for me it was like pretty much it's either I survive today, tomorrow, or I might not survive at all. After that happened to me, I would say that, like I said, it was like I felt like I died, but then me, obviously still being alive, I feel like my oldest took it as an advantage to create what they wanted to create and their perception. And when they done that, it was a fact of like, cool, they're going like this proves our point. They're going to kill you. So I'll say that for it's a fact of like, cool. When I got stabbed, they looked at it as a form of okay, you need to retaliate. Retaliation is key. And it was not a fact of obviously, you know what, yeah, this situation's happened and obviously, you know, you're young or whatever. It was a fact now where a lot of it was focused on retaliation. And when I say retaliation, it was a fact where by the time I was 12, I was given, for my 12th birthday, was a shotgun and also a bulletproof vest to make sure that that don't happen again.
How did you navigate that in terms of at the age of 12? How did you hide these things? How did you keep them? Where did you keep them?
So at the age of 12, for me, I already, the placements brought down shortly before, I think, shortly after my 12th birthday. And when the placement brought down, it was a fact where I was placed into a home where someone came in to check in and I was the only one there. So a lot of times I was just left there. So it was that I didn't need to hide anything from anyone. It was a fact of like, I was living in East. So I used to live in South London and I was moved to East London. And this is obviously because I also got stabbed and everyone they thought, yeah, you know what, we're gonna move him to East London, but still make him get a cab to school. So majority of the time I was coming home with a vest on. I had I had a knife, I had a knife tucked away and also a gun inside my chest. Shortly after turning 12, I was obviously involved heavily with county lines. So I was sent out of town, which is obviously to different places outside of London to sell drugs. But in also that period of time of being sent out of town, I was ironed in my chest. When I say ironed in my chest, I mean like when now, like when we talk about ironing your clothes, I was literally a hot iron was putting on my chest because the people that came in the house wanted the drugs, and then them not getting the drugs and me obviously refusing, they ironed me in my chest, which then led to me giving them the drugs.
Was there ever a moment where you thought this lifestyle's not for me, or did it all just feel normal?
To me, it was normal. There was never a time where I thought like this wasn't for me. Like for me, this is it. Like it's either I survive today or I'm not gonna survive for tomorrow. I have to survive tomorrow. I have to survive the next day. It's all survival. Constantly living in survival. And it's like the more you live in survival, the darker it gets. And as the darker it gets, the more that I said that I'll say I lost that little boy that was doing the worm in year 6 and wanted to play basketball, or starting year 7 wanting to play basketball and thought that, I might be the next Michael Jordan or something. You know what I'm trying to say to you? That I lost all of that. And it was just for me now, like this is it.
What's one thing about gang life that people glamorize, but in reality, it's completely different?
I would say for them, everyone sits down and think that money, you get money and, easy money. But the same way as easy money is also easy losses. And I remember when I was arrested when I was like 13, like all my money was taken away from me. Like, and that was for me was one of my biggest losses because I thought to myself, how? Like I've literally bled, sweat, done everything for this cash. But then even that money, you can go buy as much clothes as you want to buy and do whatever you want to do. But that money doesn't have a receipt. So really and truly, I couldn't really do much with that money even I wanted to. I remember one time where I was homeless, and this is before I went to prison. I had all the money, and I remember going to different hotels, different B&Bs, and all of these places, and they wouldn't take my money, and I had to end up sleeping on the block, even though I had all the money. Like, it didn't make no sense to me. But because I was young, and obviously at that point, I'm a young child trying to get accommodation. Originally, I say I've been in prison twice, but the first time I was in prison, I've been in prison more than twice, but two sentences. The first time I was in prison, I was remanded, and that was for technically attempted murder turned to GBH, and then it was dropped after. And then that was possession of a shotgun without a certificate and also ammunition. And that's when I was 13, 14. Yeah. I remember the day I got arrested. Obviously, people will sit down and talk about the whole, when I got arrested, man, held it like a G and everything else. I remember when the armed police were coming through the door and the house was surrounded. Even I remember trying to hop out the window, looking at the window and just seeing guns being pointed at me. And I remember just ended up sitting in the middle of the room, my bedroom at that time, barricaded the door, and I started crying. I started crying because for me, I didn't know what was next for my life. I didn't know what was gonna happen. So I just remember started crying, and obviously after the police came in, I got arrested, and going through that process of court or being even in the station, don't know what's happening next, don't know where my life is gonna what my life is gonna take me. Then going into a secure center, because obviously when you're under the age of 16, you don't go to a YOI, you go to a secure training center. YOI is a Young Offender Institute, and the secure training center is for the age of that obviously young people between the age of 11 till 15, 16. And obviously it can be for longer, but it's mainly for up to 15, 16.
At this point, what was your faith like? Did you a Christian? Are you Muslim? Did you believe in God?
I'll be real, I believed in nothing. I didn't think there was any saving or any savior coming or any hope. Like, I just believed that I needed to survive. I didn't sit down and think, oh, you know what? Like, God's with me or anything like that. I didn't see anything, then just like survive.
During this whole sort of time period, did you ever lose someone close to you because of this lifestyle?
I'll say that I lost, I'll say that in losing, I remember one of the biggest loss for me, especially when it comes to friends that I grew up with, was that it wasn't even done through this lifestyle. It was done through him being, so he was involved and his parents sent him back to Somalia. And in that point, there was wars happening in Somalia. And I remember this being told him while I was in prison. This is when I was doing my first sentence as a child. And I remember being called by a friend, which we both grew up with. And the girl just saying that, oh, Notes is dead. Like, we're getting told that they blew up his house. And I'm just there like, what? Not my people. Like, it doesn't make sense. And that's off like literally him being sent back home because his parents wanted him to not be involved in this, but instead he had a different outcome. But then I'll say then later on losing other friends and it became numb. Like you don't really. It's like it's gonna sound really bad, but people die. Like that's how it became for me. It's that death happens a lot, and as it happens, you just gotta just take it.
Was there a specific moment when you decided that you're done with this lifestyle, or was it a slow process?
I would say it was a slow process because when I obviously my sentence at the age of 13, like when that whole situation was over and dealt with, it was a fact of like I went on a run for a bit, and after going on the run for like 9 months and all of these type of things, I found out that my co-defendant, who was older than me, um, was obviously blamed everything on me in court. So for me, I really took betrayal quite as a thing of like, cool, I'm done with these people. But even being done with these people, it was a fact of I couldn't. It couldn't just be a fact of walking away. So I remember, I remember having a conversation with one of my elders, and this is when I came out of prison, and I already had the thought process of these people are not like they're not loyal people. They're like it's not it doesn't make sense. They don't abide by codes that they told me to abide by. So I remember sitting down, having a conversation with my older, and I was sitting down saying to him, yo, like, what happens if I want to just sign out and I want to be done? And him putting it into play for me and saying to me, cool, if you want to sign out, this is what happens. So already we've got ops. And when I mean by ops, I mean enemies. So we've got enemies already, which I've basically got from being around and being associated with the gang already. Then on top of that, I've just basically went to prison for firearms. So I got a firearm marker on me. So I'm by the police, I'm quite dangerous. Then on top of that, we're gonna turn on you. Because obviously, bro, like, can't just sign out. What do you think this is? And I remember that whole conversation of the only bit I remember the most, especially, was that, what do you think this is? And for me, it was like, okay, cool. And also for me as a child, I was always the quiet one, the one that just says, yes, let's go, let's do this, let's do that. And as time went past, I started saying a lot of, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not hearing that. I'm not having it. I'm not doing it. So I became a problem for my elders. And also, which then led to, I'll say, conflict with my elders, where I wanted to leave, but for me to be able to leave, it felt like I had to go into war with my elders. I got set up when I was 19. I got set up when I was 19 years of age, where so from the age of like 16 to 19, I was at full on conflict with my elders. Then at the age of 19, I was given a firearm. A month after my birthday, I was given a firearm, and I was told, "Raw, what you gotta do is hold this firearm for the night, and we'll pick it up the next day." For me, normal. I'm used to holding machines. I'm used to holding firearms. This is my life. like holding firearms, they're nothing. Then at 4:30 in the morning, I'm being raided because they had intel that I had a firearm in the house. It was checkmate for the police because I also at that time the police looked at me as someone violent, someone dangerous, and it was a fact where when they arrested me, then they arrested me in the mother of my child's house, and they then arrested me at the mother of my child's house. It was a fact of if I plead not guilty, the mother of my child goes to prison. So I had to plead guilty. And in me pleading guilty, I was sentenced 5 years.
During that sentencing, what was going through your mind? Was it always on your mind to still transition after it was done? Or did you want to get revenge?
I was 100% say at the start of my sentence, I was definitely focused on revenge. I was definitely focused on a lot of revenge. But also, I had my, I'll say, I had another child in a way. So it was like, I was very 50-50 now, where my mindset was that I wanna walk away, and maybe this, if I'm able to get a restart, I will take the restart. But I never knew how likely that would have been, so I never really took it as a thing that it's possible to get to like walk away from something. So a lot of time in that sentence, I done a lot of parenting courses, done the sycamore tree course, which is like a course that's obviously teaching you about your offense and everything else. I done what's it called, restorative justice. Like I done that whole course. I done every course that I could do in prison to try to better myself and try to understand why I act in a certain way or why I'm in the position I'm in. But none of them courses for me worked. It was like at the end of my sentence, I was facing a deportation order. I was given a deportation order where I'm meant to be sent back to Nigeria. And I remember being introduced to my solicitor by accident, where she was just on the wing and I was just shouting at her. And from there, we just started speaking. And then we had a conversation. And after having a conversation, she introduced me to a psychologist. And when she introduced me to a psychologist, she just told me, tell her your story. Told the psychologist my story. After telling the psychologist my story, it was then a fact where the psychologist then and my solicitor came back and told me I've been groomed. But for me, this is normal. Like, this is how it is growing up on the block. I don't know anything else. Like, so I didn't really understand it. But when I was then released, due to be in class, obviously going through the NRM, which is National Referral Mechanism, who identifies people as survivor of modern day slavery. So I was identified as a survivor of child criminal exploitation. And after being identified as a survivor of child criminal exploitation, I was released out of prison. And when I was released out of prison, I was then taken away to a safe house in Manchester. And that's when I'll say through probation, I met my trauma advisor. I would say it was her that slightly made me start understanding things weren't as normal as I thought it was. Like certain behaviors, certain actions that I'd done, and also started challenging my thought process too. And I remember one of the, because a lot of times, even after, I'll say years of working through a lot of things, I would say that it was later on where she put it into play for me and said to me, cool, I remember saying to her, I don't believe I was exploited because this is normal. Like any young boy in the hood, if I put them in front of you right now, they will tell you a story, maybe not the same, but similar. Like, it doesn't make sense. And she then said to me, "I cool, maybe you're just stuck in the picture. Let's take you out of the picture. Let's put your kids in the picture. If your kids went through everything you went through, how would you feel as a parent?" And I remember answering and saying to her, I'll spend the rest of my life in prison because I'll kill every single person for trying to do that to my children. And then she then turned around and said to me, "Why is it okay for it to happen to you?" And that's when it hit me. Nah, this isn't as normal as I thought it was.
What do you do now, and how does it feel compared to your past life?
So me, I'm a public speaker. I'm also a mentor and advocate for change. And I will say that my life, a lot of times people say to me, oh, you've changed and everything else, but my life hasn't changed. I'm just trapping, but a different type of hustle. Like it's the same type, the same mindset. I look at everything as lines. Like my mind is stuck in a certain way because that's how I look at life. And because that's how I look at life, I try my best to try putting these ways so I'm able to understand it. So for me, I'll say that I used to be a leader of destruction. I never knew much, so it was just a fact of acting on impulse and acting on feelings and everything else. But now I'm able to be a leader of change. I'm able to have a voice for young people who feel like they're not being heard by a system, which obviously for me, I feel like needs to be changed and which is unfortunately failing a lot of young people.
If you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what would you say?
I'll say keep on going, man. You're a soldier, man. Nah, a lot of times I would never change my past or change how I dealt with things as a child. Because if I did, then I wouldn't be the person I am now. And I wouldn't be able to be making the impact and changes that I'm able to make now.
What's the biggest myth about gangs that you want younger people to know or understand?
It's the word trapped. Like when people say, oh, you're trapping and all of these type of things, it actually means you're trapped. You're trapped in a lifestyle and a cycle that's pretty much hard to escape. And if you get involved in that cycle, it's just gonna take you deeper and deeper into a position you don't wanna. You probably won't know who you are at the end of it, because when it comes to gang and everyone sits down and think this is a family, these are people that will support you. This is wherever it is. To me, that's a lie. I remember both sentences I'd done it by myself. There was no one. But every single time when I came out of prison, everyone wanted to be everyone wanted to surround me like, like they helped me through my sentence or they helped me through my bid. But it was always me having to go through it. When I was in them cells, it was me that had to deal with it. When there was no canteen and I didn't know where the next money was coming from, it was me that had to figure it out. Like, it's a fact where you just feel I went in there because I would have done anything for my elders because I loved them and my I thought they were my everything. But then it was a fact where now I really saw it as a fact of like I was their everything. I was their paycheck. I was their way for them to function every single day. Like literally, I remember sitting down thinking, even when I was in prison the last time, was that I made this guy rich while I slaved myself away on the block day and night, day and night, day and night. And this person is just there and still out there and so comfortable living his life.
For someone watching this episode who wants to leave that lifestyle but they feel stuck, what's the first step that they should take?
I'll say knowledge. People underestimate knowledge. For me, for 2 years I didn't have my status in the country, so I wasn't able to work or study. And when I wasn't able to work and study, I started following professionals around, including my trauma advisor, my mentor at the time. And when I started following these people around, I started watching what they were doing and also understanding everything that's happened to me. It's that once you're able to understand everything that's happened to you, you're able to then start thinking a bit different and challenging your own self. Because a lot of times you couldn't tell me I was wrong. Growing up, you can't tell me I'm wrong. What do you mean? Like literally, it doesn't make sense. But now I'm a person where I'm able to sit down and take accountability for some things I have done and sit down and say, okay, you know what? That's wrong. But why did I think that was okay at that time? Why did I think my actions were all right?
If you could leave people with one message about everything that you've been through, what would it be?
I would definitely say that I was once labeled the devil walking on earth, but now I'm labeled as hope for change. My name is Sosa Henkoma. This is how I, with Make It Common.